Greetings and good vibes, y'all. Welcome back. Today we have Jamal Johnson, SKU, which means Stop Killing Us. He had an annual march that started back in 2017 after a Philly police officer fatally shot David Jones twice in the back. He vowed he would march to the steps of the U.S. Capitol every year to call on the Congressional Black Caucus to pass police reform legislation. Then in 2021, his march earned another purpose: to advocate for federal resources and action to stem the flow of illegal guns into Philly streets and amid an unprecedented gun violence crisis. Quote, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act still hasn't passed, and there still hasn't been a strategy delivered from the Black Caucus about the gun violence issue going on in the nation and our community, end quote. Johnson said in the interview, 212 homicides in the city of Philadelphia as of July 2nd. 914 people have been shot in the city of Philadelphia as of July 1st. And that number has increased because today Jamal just posted another fit. In 2021, he went on a 26-day hunger strike outside of the city hall to urge Mayor Kenny to declare a state of emergency over gun violence. He did not. And in 2022, he walked 90 miles to then Governor Tom Wolf's Harrisburg home. That's when I personally got wind of him as he passed through Lancaster. In 2022, he walked 90 miles. He has been called on the city to bring in the Pennsylvania National Guard to do what Philly police are too short-staffed to do. Johnson is also asking for more congressional and local attention to be drawn to the gun violence crisis plaguing the city, where the homicide total has been either above or near the pace of 2021, the year with the most homicides in the city's history. He says there's lack of urgency, and most of all, I think there is lack of outcry from the community, end quote. He said, sooner or later, you're going to know someone in Philly that has been shot or know someone that has been shot. Tune in to find out more about what Jamal is doing and ways that you can help or get more informed.
The really sad statement of all this is that our women, our children, our elderly are just prey to these, what I consider to be domestic terrorists in our city right now.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. My name is Chaz Neal, aka The Urban Conservative. You are tuned in to The Urban Conservative and Arm Yourself with Knowledge. And today with co-host Jontel Tolan.
Yo, what's going on, my brother? That was my bad. I actually hit the button when you did it. It messed it up. I saw it. I didn't want to say nothing, but you good, bro. How you doing, man?
I'm good. And today we have all the way who is, I don't think he's in Philadelphia right now, but he's from Philly, and he's going to bring some of that Philly love today. We have Jamal Johnson with us, and it's such an honor to have you, sir.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
So before we get into this, we have a little clip that we want to play. It's about 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. About an interview that you did, I think it was this year in March. So John Tev, you want to play that real quick?
Yes, sir.
Settings, remember?
DC on foot in the fight for safer streets.
I just have to go do something. Everybody's
Can you hear it?
talking. We don't want to sit there and talk. We want to do.
All right.
Jamal Johnson is a fixture in the Philadelphia anti-violence community.
Go, we gotta go.
He's sometimes a one-man protest in neighborhoods troubled by gun violence. So once again, he will make the 140-mile journey to Washington, D.C. on foot in the fight for safer streets.
I just have to be self-motivated by the fact that I believe every step I take is a step in the right direction. And if I don't take it, no one will.
The 21-day trip starts tomorrow. It's the 7th time he's done it, calling attention to the killings in Philadelphia and across the country. Here at home so far, the gun violence numbers are trending in the right direction. According to the latest stats, homicides are down 18% compared to this time in 2022. The number of shootings and shooting victims are also down about 25%.
I'll be angry, but I'm in pain when because why? Why does it happen? 30 shell cases in the middle of the street.
James Lambert will be with Johnson for some of the 140 miles. We're told others will also join along the way. Johnson tells NBC 10 he's hoping to meet with members of the Congressional Black Caucus, but he wants neighborhoods to take back their own blocks. What do you think about all this gun violence?
Actually, I'm a little disillusioned by the fact that the community hasn't really gotten involved a lot more than they have. And I think the nonprofit groups have got to start stepping up and stepping out.
A fight he's willing to go the distance for. Aaron Baskerville, NBC 10 News.
So, Jamal, I want to first of all thank you for coming on today, and I want for you to tell the people more about who Jamal Johnson is, what your fight is, how you originally got out into the streets, your background. Just basically just tell us, who Jamal Johnson is and what is SKU, what is Stop Killing Us.
Well, basically, I'm from Philadelphia, born and raised. I joined the military, finished my time in there, then joined the post office, finished my time in there, and started enjoying my retirement, at which time we had an escalation in shootings and killings by police officers. So I joined in the fight in that after the death of a young man named David Jones, who was shot in the back and killed. As time went, I had spoken on the issue of gun violence, but that was not my priority. But as the years had gone by and I was doing a yearly march to DC to address the police brutality, I saw the gun violence numbers escalate. So as a result of that, I put the gun violence and the homicides to the forefront of my mission on my march to DC. I started doing that probably about 3 years ago. I also started going out to the various homicide sites and protesting and rallying the community to get involved. I've gone to the homes of the mayor and the governor, and of course I've gone out to the Congressional Black Caucus, and this was the 7th year, and this year I actually finally got an audience and spoke to them about finding out what they were doing, if anything. And they told me some of the things they were doing out there. But right now, as you know and everybody else knows, this gun violence is rampant throughout all Black communities in this country. And my goal still is to try to minimize it in Philadelphia, but also have some effect on what's happening across the country. The Stop Killing Us SKU March came about, as like I said, about the David Jones murder by the police officer. I had joined a group that was called Stop Killing Us that's located in North Carolina, the organization. And I named the march after that organization. And I've been doing that, like I said, for 7 years. And right now I'm building a strategy as to how we can push forth to get more immediate attention in reference to all these homicides that are happening in our communities across this country.
When for you because I know for me, as somebody that first got into this when it came to police brutality, and then seeing how much the gun violence was being ignored. So how do you feel? Because I know it's only been 3 years for me, and as for somebody that has been in this movement and this fight for very much longer than I have been, where do you feel like the disconnect or like the community has been forgotten about? When was that big notice? Was it George Floyd? Was it 2020, or was it the pandemic? Um, I mean, what do you feel that made the violence get so much more out of, or was it always there? I guess is really should break it down.
Well, I would say it's always been there. I grew up somewhere in the 70s when we had the gang wars that were really rampant going on in the country. And I was inside of a organization that was addressing the gun violence at the time. So a lot of the tactics that I use now, the strategies I use, come from that time. And they were successful in reducing and eventually eliminating gang violence in Philadelphia for quite some time. Now, with this gun violence and a lot of these things not necessarily being led by organized gangs, I just think the bottom line is that the city has decided, well, we'll go ahead and give money, and money will help solve this problem. I don't believe that. And I think one of the reasons why it's gotten so out of control is that we keep doing the same thing, expecting something different to happen. But people, us, the community, has got to become more involved. That's one of my major cries, is the fact that the city residents aren't taking this seriously and urgently enough, until, of course, it happens to someone in their family or someone they know.
Right.
And I'm hoping that sooner or later, especially with what has happened in the last couple of days with the mass shooting, I hope people will start realizing that we have got to be more vigilant and involved in what's happening in our communities.
Now, when you say that the community needs to be more involved, what do you mean by that? I mean, because we have already, these community groups, we have nonprofits, we have, churches, community neighborhood organizations. Like, where do you feel like isn't being done enough, or because they'll tell you they'll just throw money at it, but is that money even being used in the appropriate, way that it should be?
Well, as far as the nonprofits go, I don't think that the accountability has been forthcoming as much as it should be. In fact, Philadelphia just got their first report, I believe it was last week, in reference to accountability on these programs. And from what I read, it doesn't really say that there's a direct correlation between these programs and the downturn in some of the violence. And that downturn is very minimal. At most, it's probably 20% in reference to homicides. So now we still have the shootings that are still rampant in the city. And meanwhile, there's more money pouring out to more nonprofit programs. I'm not trying to say they're not productive. I'm not saying that they're not affecting this gun violence. What I'm saying is that after 3 years, at least, and with the efforts and the amount of people and the amount of nonprofits involved, I think we should have accomplished more by now. And the fact that the community, which I believe is not being addressed enough to be engaged and being assisted enough, I think that the communities basically have taken the stance that, we're just hostages. We're going to stay in the house and stay away from all this stuff. When in reality, I think it needs to be switched around, and they need to be the number one vehicle driving this crime and these killers out of their own neighborhoods. I don't mean one-on-one confronting people. I mean just the presence. And I've been requesting and demanding and asking for presence in our communities by those who live there and those who are being paid supposedly to address this problem.
Now, because there is a lot of resources that are thrown into the community, in different various ways. But I've noticed, though, as more money over the years has been thrown out, also programs and let's say like the Boys and Girls Clubs, we've seen YMCA's closing. You don't see the same athletic neighborhood groups. Like, when I was growing up, we had, basketball teams, football teams, various different things
You were
for
able to see the direct, tangible fruits of that labor and
Right.
where the money actually was going. Whereas a lot of things are fuzzy these days, especially after the pandemic. A lot of money has even been transferred. Even worse, we don't know where a lot of stuff is going.
That's right.
But like y'all both hit on the same point. Is like in the past 3 years alone, we should see more than what we're seeing. If anything, things have turned the other way in the opposite way and gotten a lot worse since. So yeah, where has a lot of money going? But I think that's the bigger issue for me is, yeah, it's always about follow the money. We know that that's a given, but then I think the one thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about, like the elephant in the room, is the legislation,
Right.
or lack thereof, or lack of attention towards our supposed leadership. And before we went live, y'all spoke on leadership a lot. How there's a lack of actual leadership. Past generations grew up on some kind of peer respect, leadership, and be able to have the sense of camaraderie and community, to have unity. And as I feel like as time has went on, we've talked about like the different decades and the degradation of a family familial structure. We could talk about the war on drugs, but really it's all about the lack of legislation. I feel is a root to it, and the people that are benefiting are the ones that's pocketing.
Well, let me be straightforward about something. First of all, we got a lot of money going out, allegedly, to these groups, but we don't realize a lot of that money is going to groups that have nothing to do with our communities directly. They don't come in our communities. They don't associate with us. And I mean, you have universities that are getting a lot of money. You know, you got studies going on left and right that the people in the community don't have a clue about, but yet these people are getting paid a lot of money to do these studies. You know, and as far as legislation goes, I mean, you get people that will bust people out of these neighborhoods to go up to the Capitol and hold signs asking for legislation, which they know they're not going to get. And meanwhile, those same people won't come in our neighborhoods and try to improve our situation. You know, and I've spoken on this about that to the community about, you know, how we can take 2-hour rides to the Capitol, but we won't take 2 steps outside our front door and try to protest, you know, this killing that's going on right in our neighborhoods. So, I mean, there's a lot of things we are doing. And I'll be one of the first ones to call out what we don't do, but also when it comes to the political side of things, you know, the politicians are getting, basically, to me, they're getting a pass card, you know, because they can say, well, we're giving you the money, and if you're not getting it done, how can you blame us? But the fact is, they should be more involved. They should be more effective. They should be as urgently, aggressively pursuing whatever it takes to help us out. But instead, they go and dole out this money to certain groups, certain people they know, certain people that, you know, they feel favored to, that may not be doing as well or as much as other groups that could probably do a lot more if they were given the attention and given the funds. So, I mean, it's just a rabbit hole. And the bottom line is that the citizens are the ones still being held captive in their homes and not being able to go about freely, have their children go about freely. And to me, it's a sad situation.
I feel you on that, and I feel you about the rabbit hole. I feel like we have to set a point and put our feet in the sand and set a point of starting somewhere. And a lot of times, you kind of hit on it. Like, how can we point the finger at and blame anyone else if we're not holding ourselves accountable first? Like,
That's right.
If we're to know where we stand on an issue and what we need to do, we have to start with ourselves. Look at the inner, no matter what has been done to us or what environments we've been placed in is relevant, but it can't be relevant until we've already taken care of ourselves and figured out what we need to do within ourselves. And so, like, that's what I really admire about you and the stance that you take, regardless of if there's any kind of pushback, because me and Chaz can relate in our own community, for taking a certain stance and voicing stuff that a lot of times people want to just smear under the rug or not talk about because they deem it problematic. And so, like, I do want to dig into that too. Like, do you get pushback from politicians and from media, the city, our community about like these issues?
All the above. When I did my hunger strike against the mayor, you know, I got pushback from organizations. I was told or asked not to do it. I got very minimal support from many of the nonprofits. And, you know, this is just an ongoing thing. When I go out on the streets, I may get 2 to 3 people to come out, if that. And we're talking about a city of 1.6 million people, you know, and I got to keep it real.
we're talking about black people who are basically 90%, at least 70 to 90% of the people who are dying out here.
Yep.
And yet, we won't come up and stand up. So, I mean, you got to call it what it is. If you're going to go after the other people, like you said, you got to look at yourself too.
And that's the one major part for me is that I've realized is we want accountability from others, but when I mean by others, I mean a system, but we don't never want accountability when it comes to each other. And I think for me, there's not enough call for accountability in our own communities as there is so much when it comes to, legislation, because everybody, to me, and this is just, again, this is my opinion, but I feel like sometimes we go to the wrong people to get that change in the community, because I don't ever feel like there's any legislation that can honestly help. I think it's education, to educate people of understanding of why it is the way that it is, because when people don't understand it, that there is a better way. We have different opportunities, but if we feel like we're that victim and, they have all these systems in play with, welfare, Section 8, to keep I'm going to say it, the family nucleus apart, because that's what I feel is a big major part is missing. There's not enough family structure, and we want all this governmental assistance, but they're not the ones helping, when honestly, at the end of the day, the ones that are going to save us is inside the home, and they're not putting enough resources there.
And the home is not, to me, taking enough accountability for a lot of the problems that are happening. I mean, we have people who could do things in their own community to at least deter some of this crime, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
I've been asking for boots on the ground. When I say that, I mean it seriously.
Right.
That we start standing up, especially men, start standing outside their communities, sitting on their step, doing anything to be a presence in the communities. And I get a lot of pushback from that, because they say, well, what about the police? Well, we know we're understaffed for the police department. That's one reason why I asked for the National Guard,
Right.
which of course they want to attack me for that. But the bottom line is, if you're not going to do it, who's protecting these women, these children, these elderly people out here who are being prey to these people who are shooting down the street? I mean, it's unfortunate what happened with the mass shooting, but the mass shooting, it was only just, for lack of a better word, a graduation to the crime we've been getting anyway.
Right.
I mean, it's been going on forever. So, I mean, why is everybody so surprised that now we got somebody who's unfortunately might be mentally unstable? But the bottom line is he's doing in one day what we've been talking about for years.
Right.
It's just one individual. But meanwhile, we've always had these bodies mounting up. I mean, we're almost 1,000 homicides right now. I'm sorry, almost 1,000 shootings. People have been shot in Philly this year already. That should not be after at least 2 or 3 years. Supposedly, we've been addressing this gun violence problem.
You brought up a good point of, with police staffing issues. Do you feel like that plays a major part in all the homicides going up? Or do you feel like that was just something that was bound to happen, and regardless of staffing, it was going to be there anyways?
Well, I think George Floyd protests changed a lot of things for the police. There's no doubt about it. The way that they look at us, the way they deal with us, what they're willing to sacrifice to address us anymore. They're under the microscope. And I can't blame them. I mean, they got a job. They want to go back home every night. But the bottom line is we still got to bring it back to the community. I mean, the community has got to take charge of their community. I mean, I don't know how you expect somebody else to care about your woman, your child, your children, more than you do. That's ridiculous. And the fact that the way that the killing has been going on, and how often it is, and the lack of attention, even by our elected officials. I mean, right now, we just had a major mass shooting in Philadelphia. 5 people dead. We had 2 people running for mayor, and neither one of them have appeared on the scene. I mean, what does that say to you? What does that say to the community? And the community, from what I understand, has been like a ghost town, most of the time since this has happened, which I don't blame them, because the bottom line is this mass shooting is just an addition to the daily killings we've been getting. So I mean, what did they think? How did they think people were going to respond? But the thing is, where's the leadership? Where's the leadership from the community? Because I'm saying, even to those who are tasked with doing this job that are supposedly a part of the community, the nonprofits, we don't see you. People don't see you. So if you're not being seen, I don't care what you're doing in a building somewhere. The people who are being most impacted by this don't see you, you're not doing anything. And that's what I've been saying. Come on out in the street, put some time, knock on the doors. There are people in those houses that don't come out. They're not going to come to your church. They're not going to go to your meeting. They're not going to go out here and get to where you are for whatever reason. Then we got to get to those people. We got to let them know that we're there for them. We got to try to encourage them to be part of the solution. And that's not happening enough in Philadelphia.
You know, honestly, I don't believe it's happening enough anywhere, because there's plenty of that. And maybe you know some of these individuals, these gentlemen too. You know, Tyrone Muhammad out of Chicago. I don't know if you ever met him personally, but that's another one that fights gun violence and is really out there, you know, boots on the ground, trying to, you know, I know people don't like Charleston White, you know, but for me, I think why people don't like us is because it makes them look in the mirror. You know what I'm saying? It's when it comes from somebody that
it makes them uncomfortable.
Right. And that for me is, I get so much blowback because I do call out, you know, the nonprofits of my community. I call out you know, my Black elected officials. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me what color you are. If you're an elected official and you're supposed to be fighting for my community, you're supposed to be in that community. You know what I'm saying? It shouldn't be a tragic event to happen, or you want our vote is the only time we ever see you. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Because that's the biggest part for me, is these especially in bigger cities, because elected officials make so much money. This is basically their jobs, but they're not accessible to us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're accessible to those corporations or, you know, people that they get along with. But I guarantee it, Jamal, when you go to the mayor or you go to your alderman or your district representative, your council member, I can guarantee it that somebody that agrees or has the same agenda as them is going to get way quicker response than you will, for the simple fact of that they see you as a so-called uncalled problem, when honestly you're just telling the truth.
Well, see, that's where too, I must say that I think that's where we're the problem too, because if we're not willing to go and kick butt and take names to save ourselves, and I mean, who can we really blame? You know, when you have people who are going out here saying they don't want to go in certain neighborhoods because they're dangerous, and that's why they don't come out on their blocks, but yet these same people will canvass for politicians and go in those same neighborhoods because they get paid. So you're not going to look at me and tell me that what I'm asking you for is above and beyond what you can do. I know you can do it. The question is, how come you're not for your own child? Now, when your child gets killed, then you want to give me a call. You want to say, let's go out here and do this, that, and the other. Sure, I'll help you, but I'm not going to forget the fact that you're the same person that looked me and told me I was crazy for being outside. You know, we got to get involved. We got to do something. We can't do the norm. We have to go above the norm. You know, when they have all these marches for Asian hate, marches for LGBTQ, all these, you know, these same people in those marches. Well, how can you not march in mass against all this killing going on in your streets?
Right.
It just makes no sense.
No, and that does, because for me, I don't know, I'm just going to put a scenario that happens in Minneapolis that I see it, because the people that speak for the damaged part of our communities, our cities, don't even live there. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. That's a big part for me, because
that's right.
They live in the suburbs. You know, as somebody that is, you know, we started an organization in Minneapolis called Black Lives the Streets to really counteract Black Lives Matter, because we felt like, regardless of whoever it does it, the police, if it's an overdose, if it's a domestic violence, if it's, you know, something that happened in the streets, they matter to us. Doesn't matter what race, or not so matter race, but your religion, your sexual identity, none of that mattered to us. It mattered that your life mattered.
Right.
And that's, to me, is unless it's profitable, is the only way these people come out. And that for me is the biggest, especially because I see that in Philly. I see more about because let me put this out here too. I have family that's out in Philadelphia, the Neal family. My family owns Southwest Auto Body Shop.
Okay.
Harold Neal is my uncle. And so he's been in the Southwest community for years. And, you know, when I go out there, and my family was a part of Move, which is really messed up. You know, we won't even get into that because that's a whole other opening, a whole other can of worms.
Oh yeah.
You know, but it's, and I just think about the Black Panthers, you know, and how much they were ridiculed for the way that they wanted to take care of their community. You know, I go back to a quote from Malcolm. I feel like you have to be willing to pick up the gun to put down the gun. And there's a lot of people that aren't willing to pick it up so that we're able to put it down. You know, there's all that kumbaya, and, you know, you can't fight fire with fire, but you can fight violence with violence, especially if it's violence and you're defending yourself. You're defending your community. And I don't think people fully understand that. Is they talk about defending their community, but they're not really willing to die for their community.
Well, you know, you brought up an influencer, what's his name? Charleston
White.
Charleston White.
Yeah.
And I got to say that I think that most influencers have let our community down.
Oh,
you know, our children are the ones that are killing one another. And those are mainly the people who listen to a lot of these influencers on the internet, you know. And when I see and hear these people speak, and I've said this on a couple of their programs, they don't talk about this issue as much as they should. They don't address those who are probably the shooters as much as they should. They talk about all the other things going on in this country, but they won't narrow down about the fact that we're out here watching our kids kill one another. And of course, I'm not speaking about every single person. I'm talking about at least 80% of them don't touch this topic. And I've questioned them and asked them why, you know. And a lot of them said it has something to do with the fact that the people who, if they address them, then they may not listen to them, which of course takes down their base. My thing is that how can we, those of us who claim to be responsible, not call them out? You know, I call a lot of them out because the bottom line is those are the ones who have our children's ears. So of course, if they were to start encouraging some of these kids to stop this stuff, they might actually give it a second thought. But because no one's saying a word about it to them, the people like the Breakfast Club, all these kind of people, you know, who's talking to them and saying to them, look, why don't y'all start talking about all this killing on our streets? Instead, you're talking about who's sleeping with who and who's doing what to whatever.
Right.
And so it still comes back to us ultimately, I feel.
You know, and I found this morning, but Ice Cube, I found something was with Bill Maher or whatever his name is.
Yeah, I saw that the other day.
I was watching that this morning, and I felt like there was a good point. And I know Cube's been saying this for a very long time, and I don't think people have really paid attention. But I think now in the era that we're in, and we're seeing all these rappers die, is it finally time to put the connection between record labels and prisons? Because rap really does promote violence. And that's what our kids listen to, you know, and now we're seeing it go into the NBA. We're seeing it, even though it's been there, but because of social media, it's more upplayed. And I feel like we have to start going at the problem and not just the sub problems of it, because if we don't get the core issue of it, we're always going to have different fractions of the problem. Does that make?
I agree with you. But, you know, the thing is, like I keep saying, is that all these things we're talking about late in the last few minutes, when it comes down to it, it comes down to us, not the politicians, you know, not the other people outside of us. It comes down to us addressing issues in our community first. And everybody knows that our kids are hung up on this internet. Everybody knows that these shooters are putting, I guess you're familiar with drill music.
Yeah.
Okay, then people know about drill music, and they know that a lot of these guys are shooting each other, putting it on right there on the internet on YouTube, you know, and they've been doing it for quite a while. And these kids have mothers and fathers, uncles and aunts, and they looking at them on there. And how much effort have they made to try to get these kids to get right or report them if necessary? You know, the bottom line is we're not doing enough ourselves, but that does not take away responsibility of those who we elect to do what they're supposed to do. But we still have got to be stepping it up a lot more than we have. And as far as I'm concerned, we haven't even done a quarter of the work that we could really be doing and trying to do something about this gun violence.
What is one thing that, you know, when we talk about the community and the awareness, because I know people feel like, what can we do? You know what I'm saying? How can you answer that as somebody, you know, you see somebody walking down the street and they come up to you and they see, Mr. Johnson, how can we, you know, I want to help. How can we combat gun violence? How can we prevent? How can we make more people aware?
The first thing I tell everybody is go out and sit on your step. That's what I tell them. Be a presence for your community. Because if certain people were in certain places, certain things wouldn't happen. And there are nobody in those places, so everything is happening. And that's the number one thing I say, you know, especially men. Men have got to start being seen in our communities. People have got to know that any given time, there's going to be someone around that may see what you do. And as a result of that, if you do it, you're going to be basically told on. You know, if not, we don't, when I go out, I don't confront anybody. You know, whatever they're doing, they're going to do it when I leave anyway. But I don't confront anybody. But 9 out of 10 times, a lot of these young men will go somewhere else. Why? Because they know I'm holding a post and I'm attracting attention, which is going to attract attention to what they're doing. You know, so this is what we need to be doing on all the corners. We need people that are being seen to be the eyes and ears of the community, not necessarily snitches, but just somebody that's out there that cares about their community. So you're going to come through here and try to do a drive-by. 9 out of 10, we're going to get the license plate, okay? 9 out of 10, if the people are from that community, they probably know the guys who are doing the shooting anyway. So those guys may say, well, there go Mr. Brown out there. We can't do this now. So at that one motion might have prevented that one death at that moment. Now, it doesn't mean it may not happen later. But at least for that moment, that death didn't occur. And this is the simplicity of how we got to do what we got to do. The way people make this thing so complicated is ridiculous. This is not rocket science. You know, just like you talk about the Panthers. The Panthers went out there on their own to start protecting their communities. Where are our Panthers at now? You know, I hear people talking all this stuff about the system and what it's doing to us, but what are we doing for ourselves? What are we doing to actually attack this problem without looking for City Hall and anybody else to do it while we sit back and wait? No, we got to be the first instrument in stopping this thing, and then they have got to support us because we pay them to do so. But we can't sit around talking, having meetings, having discussions. We're past all that, as far as I'm concerned. We're past all that. And until we don't do anything more than what we're doing, we are responsible in some way and form to the killing that continues to go on in our communities, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you talk mainly, and it is a no-brainer about being proactive, especially how we ended up where we are today. The one thing that we need to do and we can do simply is being proactive, instead of complaining or trying to figure out, well, what should we do after things like the mass shooting that just took place has happened. One thing I noticed about you is that you, and it should be this way, you don't wait on anyone to act. You take to the street. You're about visibility. You're about being seen to make an impact. And that's literally what you just spoke to. If there were more people being seen, just having a presence somewhere, a lot of things wouldn't be happening that have transpired. So I guess my question is, because we make an impact even when we think we're alone, even when we stand alone, continuing to be consistent and standing alone and doing what we're doing, even if because we know that it's right and it's the right thing to do, and we know we're making an impact. A lot of times we don't necessarily see that, but I will say that you've made an impact just from walking to places, you have inspired people along the way. So what would you say to people that are watching that are admiring you, but maybe like really shy or just kind of just like, well, what am I supposed to do? But you know, especially if they think that they're alone in something and they agree with you, but everybody around them doesn't. Especially, let's just say they're like a young person, right? And they're around a bunch of people that's doing the kind of stuff that we're talking about, but they feel you, they hear what we're talking about, but they don't know how to. What would your advice be?
As I've just said, physically, they could just be present in their communities if they aren't already. Secondly, they could write, call, email, text the elected officials and let them know that they're going to be a pain in their behind until they do something. And lastly, they have got to believe that everything they're doing is for the betterment of their community, and that's why they should be motivated. You don't need anybody to push you to save your kids. My granddaughter was shot coming from a funeral. That was another reason that I got motivated to get involved in this. But we shouldn't have to have that. All we got to do is look around and realize that sooner or later somebody's going to get hurt or killed that we know. So, if it happens, we don't have to be one of those that sit around and say, I wish I had done something. This is your moment to do something right now. And if you're serious about it, then do it on your own if you have to. That's the only encouragement I could really give, because the incentive of money has not helped this problem. It has not done enough. And I don't get paid for what I do.
Right.
And I tell people, it's not about the money. You don't have to do the simple stuff in our communities to get things done. You don't have to. I mean, look at our history. How many protests that we did? Nobody got paid. A lot of times, nobody got paid. Now, maybe down the line, somebody got paid under the table, whatever. But initially, the wrong people got paid, right? But initially, it was about the strength of what they believed. So if you believe that you have a obligation to your community, then do that obligation, and then try to encourage others. But if they don't do it, be seen anyway. Let people see you out there. People call me names. I mean, people I highly respected have stabbed me in my back, and I was like, wow, but I keep telling everybody, I didn't come out here to get friends. I came out here to stop these killings. And, so if I have done that, even one person, then I'm good. And as far as the politicians, they know me. A lot of them hate my guts, but that's okay too, because the bottom line is you got a job. All I'm asking you to do is your job. That's it. And if it means that I have to come to your house or pitch a tent outside of your home, then I'm going to do it, because I need you to know if nobody else in Philadelphia is serious, I'm very serious about what I'm talking about. And this is kind of what, for lack of a better word, this is my example I would give to anyone who can and is willing to do so.
I really got to give it up, because I'm one of them types that I'm literally, I call it by any means necessary. I'm not afraid to camp out in front of a elected official's house while other people are, because it's within our rights.
I was just about to say it's all right.
And I think a lot of people are undereducated about our rights, and instead of wanting to educate and learning, they just look the other way and have that victim mentality. And I know people, they hate to hear that victim mentality, but I don't know any other word to call it than they want to be victims. I don't see it any other way, because it, like you say, Jamal, until it happens into somebody's household, do they get involved? And right there is the problem. For me, is because everybody always wants to wait until afterwards instead of preventing it. But I wanted to ask a question too about violence interrupters programs, and how do you feel about that? Because I know in Minneapolis, we did a street team in 2021, and the only time we were ever out was 10 till 3 in the morning. So we were literally out. We called it demon time. It's nighttime. that's when everybody really don't want to be out. You know what I'm saying? And the people that are out, I ain't out for no good. So during the day, you see a lot of people multicolored shirts, but then when it comes to being nighttime, you don't see that same presence. And there's all this money thrown at it, but it's not money thrown at it 24/7. It's only thrown at it, let's say business hours.
Mm-hmm.
Crime doesn't have hours. You know what I'm saying? So how does that make you feel that, they throw all this money, but they don't throw it at it 24 hours a day. It's got certain hours that comes with that money.
Well, one thing is that you have to remember, if we didn't have crime, if we didn't have these killings, that money wouldn't be out here.
Right.
So if all the crime is gone, the money's gone. And people are making careers out of this stuff. You got to call it like it is. And so the people who are serious about this have got to be the ones to start calling people out. Now, people say it's wrong to call people out, just do what you do and don't worry about anybody else. Well, that may be true to those who don't get paid. But if you're getting my money, which is my money, it's tax dollars coming out of my pocket, then I'm going to call you out, because I've gone to city council members and I've said to them, why don't you, are y'all familiar with Town Watch?
Mm-mm.
Okay, Town Watch is something that's been going on for decades in Philadelphia, where the citizens come out and they basically the eyes of his community. You just walk around, make sure everything's okay. And this is going on forever. Mostly senior citizens are involved in that too. But I've asked the city, why don't you use their blueprint, but pay people to do that? This way, the people are in their own communities. The people around them know who they are. The children grew up around these same people. So their influence possibly would be stronger than someone, quote unquote, the violence interrupters that are coming out of prison, things like this. Sure, they come out. But if they were having such an impact, how come we don't see the results? And I'm not saying they don't have an impact. I'm just saying that when we keep speaking about them at the level that we do, I would think that they would come up in more conversations than some of these nonprofits. But all I'm hearing is that the nonprofits are the ones who's supposed to be doing it. Well, the nonprofits are clocking at 9 to 5. These nonprofits aren't doing that midnight stuff, know. And so, to me, if we did the Town Watch type thing, those violence interrupters should be leading that Town Watch type thing from midnight to 8 o'clock, in the morning, because they come from the streets, they know the streets, and 9 out of 10 they probably know these guys that's doing what they're doing out there. So, but for whatever reason, I don't know why. City council don't want to do it. I don't know why. And then I've also said to them, why don't you mandate that these nonprofits put time in on the street? And I mean on the street. I don't mean in a building where you have to come to or you have to sign up on this paper where they happen to be sitting at. No, I mean out on the street where these citizens can see the effect of their dollars. I don't know why they don't want to do that. And then mostly we need a citywide collaborative effort. Nobody's making these people work together. So you doing your thing where you live. My part of the city is being shot up every day. But because yours is quiet, you figure you did your job. No, this is a citywide problem. They're not just shooting in North Philly or South Philly, and they don't necessarily live where they shoot. So we have to do this thing all the way around. And for whatever reason, I'm getting a deaf ear to all these things I just talked to you about.
So that's let's talk about why that is.
Right. I was just about to ask that. Why do you feel that is?
I go back to the beginning. People are pimping off our pain. And I can say that because I remember when we first started going out of here strong, nobody was getting paid. And people were on the streets. We were out there all times of day and night. And now when that money started flowing, I can't get nobody to come out. And that's real. I mean, I've got videos where we were out on them streets and nobody was getting a cent. And now all of a sudden, everybody's pockets are heavy. You can't find a real march on the streets like we used to do with all men out there talking about we taking our communities back. You can't even find that anymore like you did before. Now there are now people starting to talk about it, which I'm glad. But I'm at the point now where I just wait till I see it happens more than once. Because that hit and miss stuff is not working either. We do it this week, we don't do it till next month. That's not going to work. We need a consistent presence on our streets. And we need it to happen to the point where when they're not there, people notice that you're not there. Right now, people don't notice that you're not there because you don't come out enough for them to notice that you're not there.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So, like you said, the midnight thing, we have got to get peace patrols. We do have groups out now that are saying they're going to start patrolling, but they're so minimal in numbers. People are not coming out and being a part of the solution. And then to me, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Right. Right. But then when you call out that they're part of, when you tell them that they're part of the problem, no, you're part of the problem. That's the biggest thing for me is it gets frustrating. And I know it's got to be frustrating for you is to sit there and to honestly not even really call them out. To me, it's telling the truth because if people get so upset to the fact of you pointing out the obvious that they get upset where, the name calling and wanting to threat, sending threats and all of that for just one unity and happiness where you live for a place that they don't even live. So
I want to talk real quick about the allies. You spoke about seeing things happen in our community. And I've had my confrontations. I call them confrontations because that's what they were, because I asked them, why is it we don't see you out here, but your organization is getting paid to address gun violence? You want to do it in an area where you feel safe, but this is not about safety because these people aren't feeling safe in these communities that you claim that you're trying to serve. So, and they'll come back with the fact that they're dealing with legislation, which I know all about it. I hear all the time. Okay. But when it comes down to boots on the ground, we can't find you. And this is not a colorblind thing. I'm sorry, this is something that is colorblind because white people get killed too in Philadelphia.
Right.
Asians get killed in Philadelphia. Everybody. It just happens more in black communities. But that does not mean you can't be a part of the solution. And I have to say, there are very few, but there have been some allies that were not black that have helped and supported me in what I've done. But as a whole, like you saw the George Floyd, how many came and poured into the streets out there? I keep asking them, why we don't see you pouring into the streets now? People are still dying on these streets here. You say Black Lives Matter. I've had my confrontation with them. Where are you at? Y'all talking about y'all want to go out only when the cops are killing us. So your problem is not really saving us. Your problem is going after the cops. So you need to not call it Black Lives Matter because obviously we all don't matter.
Right.
And that's where I am, and that's where I rest with them. To me, they are just an invisible force or an invisible presence unless the cops are involved. And to me, that's counterproductive to how we're going to live in this society with everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't have, I can't, that's how much I've grown that I can literally just say that, 2020, I would have definitely not agreed with you. I would, I would have been saying, no, it's, F the police. We need them gone. But just realizing how much that people really didn't care about what was going on in our communities. No, we need the police because y'all say y'all want to abolish police. You say you want to defund the police, but yet you're not out in these streets trying to replace the police.
See, I still am defund and abolish the police, but just like we said, in order to get rid of guns, we need to pick up that gun. Is exactly how I feel about the situation with the police. I don't like them. I panic attacks around them. I have major issues with the police, but there are reasons that we still need them.
Right.
And I would like to get to a place where we don't need them, but we still have a lot of things to pick apart and address. We can't just ignore all of these different issues and symptoms of the major problem of the system that we live in and just say we want to get rid of them. So I get a lot of people that just say, I don't want this, but how are we going to get to a point where we don't have that, to where we can manifest the things that we no longer want in our world, instead of just complaining about them and not moving towards anything to make that a reality? So I agree with you.
The problem I have with the defunders, the problem I have with y'all is that when you want to make that statement and represent that ideal, I need to know where you're at right now. I need to know what you're going to do in place of that, because I don't see y'all out there trying to stop these guys from killing our kids.
Right.
So if when we start talking about defunding the police, then who we're going to fund? You? Because you're not out there. You see what I'm saying? That's just the way I see it. And when I talk to these revolutionaries and these pro-black people, I say the same thing. You know, you want to talk about the system and the white man and all this, but here we are watching our kids decimate each other, and you're nowhere to be seen. So, you know, I don't even want to hear the rhetoric, frankly. And, you know, my thing is if you're not going to go out here do anything, be quiet. If you are going to do something, then let's talk about what you believe out there in the street, not in your neighborhood where you're in the house behind a computer. We're talking about out in the street. We can talk while we walk. But if
Right.
not, I really don't want to hear it. That's where I'm at with it.
And I agree, 100% with you because,
Yep.
we can preach it, but if we're not walking it, it's useless because if we're not out here in these streets, that's the one thing for me. And that I'll feel like is I get mad of the same things over and over again of going to the state capitol, going to city halls, going to protest at, police departments, and I always get the same response: crickets. Why aren't we taking it to the streets where it needs to be?
That's right.
I understand we need legislation changes, but that's never going to fully do anything. Where
Right.
the change needs to be is out in them streets. That's where the politicians need to be. That's where those elected officials need to be, because being inside a city hall and voting yay and nay isn't going to do everything. They need to be out in them streets doing the same old thing that Jamal's doing, that Tyrone's doing. And I'm talking about being boots on the ground, being out there, being seen, being visible, because I can tell you right now, that works. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it works.
I know it works.
Being seen,
Mhm.
it works. When people, because I will say from experience of, being on 36th and Penn, which was a real hot spot in the summer of 2021, our data, and this is the sad part because we had organizations using our data and statistics to get paid and left us out, because over the summer, that corner, crime was down 68% the year before, which 2020 was a bad year. But now it's back to where it was, and yet you see all these people getting paid, but yet the violence is back up, and it makes me really wonder. They don't want solutions. They don't want to get rid of the core issue, because at the end of the day, I feel like, and it plays back into my mind when I've gone to city council and talk about resources. Well, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. And now I really, really, really get it that gun violence brings money.
Yes.
And that makes sense to them. Violence brings money, and that makes sense to them. So I really fully understand it now of that. When the Bible talks about the root of all money being the root of all evil, yeah, because that almighty dollar rules America. So I don't know where we can go moving forward. I know that doing the things that you're doing, Jamal, are great, and it needs to be highlighted more. And I know you don't, you don't do this for, clout, fame. You just want better in your community, and that's one thing that I truly respect, to the highest. And then, yeah, I don't even know what more to say. I mean, it's, people are enamored with meeting basketball stars, celebrities. To me, you're a celebrity in my eyes, because you want better in our community and you stand up for our community. You're a leader that I want to stand by and follow, for the simple fact of that you don't bend, break, or fold on your values and your beliefs. And that's one thing that I truly respect you for. And it's a quote that I say all the time, and it's something that I live by, is that right is wrong, even if everybody is on that side, and wrong is wrong, even if there's nobody over there. So I just know that I'm on the right side of history, because there's so many people on the wrong side of history. And I want to tell you that I know I feel like there's times that, when there's not enough people that, oh, they don't care. But even if there's one or two people, I know that it's somewhere. And I know it's not going to be overnight. And that this is a marathon. And as long as I can change one person's mind a day, I'm doing the right thing. And that's what gives me hope. And I truly, truly, truly am blessed. And I'm going to give you the last 5 minutes. I'm going to let Jontel speak. And I'm definitely, thank you so much for coming on today and spreading this knowledge, this education, so that we can liberate and all live in harmony and peace. And I thank you so much, brother.
Thank you. I don't. One thing I want to do is make sure that I emphasize that I believe people are doing a lot of good work in Philadelphia. I think most people have good intentions, and a lot of times I get attacked because I call, as people could say, call people out, and they take it as though I'm brushing over everybody with the same brush. I'm not. What I'm saying is that when you say to me, everybody's not going to be in the street, all I'm saying is somebody got to be other than just me. So don't tell me that everybody's not going to do something. Somebody has got to do something. And if everyone is inside and no one's outside, then how can we possibly expect our neighborhoods to ever return back to where they used to be? And right now, that's where it's at. And this unfortunate situation that happened a couple of days ago to me was basically a call. It was a call for us to get real about this gun violence. I've given scenarios, and I believe this, that if we had been out in our communities when this unfortunate situation happened, we could have possibly minimized the deaths and had some effect on the result of what happened. Because the young man did what he did in one place and walked to the next place. So that means there was time and distance before he got to where he went and did his massacre. Things could have happened in between that. They didn't, because there's nothing out there to stop anything that's going to hurt us. Until we start holding ourselves accountable for what's going on out there and making the other people that we've elected support us, we ought to be embarrassed about our situation as far as I'm concerned.
Man,
No,
I could definitely say I couldn't agree with you more. And Chaz too. I just want to thank you as well for allowing us to interview you and you coming on the show. It really is an honor, and we just want to urge you to please keep doing what you're doing, because you do inspire people along the way. Are you going to continue to do the walk to DC every year? And do you want people to join you? Yeah.
Well, actually, this 7th year was this year, and we actually finally accomplished what we went there for. Now, what I'm waiting for is for the Congressional Black Caucus to do their part of what we spoke about. And right now, I'm not getting that back. So how I'm going to address that, I haven't decided yet, but it will be addressed. As far as the other activities that are going on in the city, I've scaled back on being out on the corners with the intention of seeing who or what will come forward. Because a lot of times, I started feeling like we were just treading water. We weren't getting anything accomplished. And I wanted to see if the other people who are watching and always honking and giving us, applause for what we're doing, if they're going to step up and step out. And I have to say, over the last couple of weeks, it's been pretty promising. Some of the signs that people have called me and they want to do things. This is what I wanted. I can't do this by myself. Right. So I'm going to see how this results, and depending on where it goes, if it just becomes a bunch of talk and no action, then I have to go back out there, because I just can't sit back and watch this and not do anything.
I really appreciate that, because you really do speak to the notion of it takes a village, and just trying different tactics and really trying to see what is going to work. But at the end of the day, you're making sure that we have to do something. And if it ain't us, you're going to do it yourself. You're going to make sure that you're playing a part in it. If not us, than who. So yeah, Chaz, you got anything left you want to say?
No, I don't. And but you said if not now, if not who?
If not us, then who?
Right. If not now, then when?
Then when?
So thank you. You know what I'm saying? I truly am blessed to have you on today. I hope that when I'm out in Philly later on this year, I hope that I'm able to meet you in person. Definitely will make you aware when I'm out there.
Sure.
So I hopefully we can do something out there. I know it'll be cold, but it is not as cold as Minnesota. So
Right.
Hey, that weather doesn't mean anything to me, my man.
Right. See, it don't mean nothing to me either. I'm one of them types that rain, sleet, snow, they don't care. So why should I care?
That's right. That's right.
So, but it's truly an honor and a blessing to be able to interview today and to have a conversation. You uplifted me today. I hope other people got uplifted and educated, and to know that there's people out here that are fighting for them. And just because we might not always agree eye to eye, that I'm out here for you, and that Jamal's out here for you, John Tayl's out here for you, and there's so many others out here that are fighting for the betterment and the empowerment of our own communities.
That's right.
So, anybody?
Right,
anything else?
Nope, I'm good. It's been a pleasure, y'all. Let's go ahead and get on up out of here. We will be back tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Setting the record straight. Definitely tune in, y'all. It's gonna be big. We're definitely gonna be addressing some things that need to be addressed and keeping up with the narrative that we just kept up with today on this webisode. So stay tuned. Another Arm Yourself with Knowledge webisode. Be safe, y'all. Be blessed. Have a good one.
Every day, fighting for my life. Every day, fighting for my life. Fighting for my life. Bread grew from the seed you thought was rot. I think not. Fire bred desire to rise above denial, to rise from former ashes to face new trial or more triumph. I am enough. Trial to triumph. I am enough. Every day I fight for my life. Every day